I can play just 6 notes. And you'll instantly recognize that sound. It's the 1-Up theme from Super Mario Bros. How about this? That is the puzzle solved jingle from The Legend of Zelda. You see, Nintendo's known for incredible music, but their sound effects are just as iconic. In this video, I want to break down the history of one particular Mario sound, his jump. We'll explore how this sound was written, some of the music theory behind the audio, and how the jump sound has changed over the past 39 years. This is the history of Mario's iconic jump. So, when talking about Nintendo's music and sound effects, there's one person who stands above the rest: Koji Kondo. Kondo joined the company in 1984 and was the first dedicated composer hired at Nintendo. Before then, the music and sound effects from Nintendo's games were written by electrical engineers who played music on the side, whereas Koji Kondo studied music in university. Now, Kondo joined the Super Mario Bros. Project early on in the game's development. His theme for the game's ground levels would become arguably the most famous video game song of all time. But it wasn't just music that Kondo was in charge of. He said in an interview, "At that time, whoever was in charge of the music also programmed the sound effects. People who joined Nintendo then as composers still had to learn how to program in order to write their music." And so, Kondo worked closely with the game's director, Shigeru Miyamoto, to figure out what noises Super Mario Bros. Would make. One of Miyamoto's first requests was a sound to play whenever Mario jumped. Kondo looked back on this request in an interview. "I remember saying something like, 'But your feet don't make any special sound when you jump.' Anyway, I thought that since this was a video game, I would like to create a sound that no one had heard before, which harnessed the Famicom's capabilities, and maybe something funny." Now, before we get to how Kondo solved that problem, I want to rewind even further back to the arcade era. Because in games such as Donkey Kong and the original Mario Bros, Mario could jump, and those jumps made noises. Here is the jump sound from Donkey Kong, and here is the sound from Mario Bros. Both of those sounds are effective, but a little on the simple side. And that's no surprise, as the tools available during the arcade era were more than primitive. They were Neolithic, practically. Donkey Kong's sound designer, the legendary Hip Tanaka, talked in an interview about making circuits using resistors and capacitors in order to get any kind of sound to play. There were no software tools. Sound designers got their hands dirty with wires and circuits. Returning to Koji Kondo then, and his task of creating Mario's jump. Kondo may well have been inspired by those earlier sounds, but what he created for Super Mario Bros. Was deceptively clever. Take a listen. That one sound is so iconic, so well known and evocative, but the sound design here is really interesting. Unlike the simpler boing sounds before, Mario's jump has a pitch curve like this. As you can see, the pitch starts low, then dips down further before ascending up and up as it fades out. I've made a simple recreation using the software FamiTracker, which lets you get hands-on with the NES's sound chip. Again, here is the start of the sound, then the next note which dips down, and then the final rise up as the volume fades. When played back at full speed, it sounds like this. You don't really take in that initial drop in pitch, but it gives the jump sound a kind of trampoline spring feel before leaping up at the end. This is actually one of 2 jump sounds from Super Mario Bros, by the way. When Mario jumps in his smaller form, a higher pitched variant of the jump sound plays. Next time you're playing the game, listen out for these two different sound effects. So, when Super Mario Bros. Was released in 1985, it became a huge hit, and its sound and music were catapulted into the public consciousness. Koji Kondo turned on his TV one day, only to hear Mario's jump sound playing from some TV quiz show. He was really pleased. In the Mario games that followed on the NES, Kondo tweaked Mario's jump slightly. But when the Mario team began work on Super Mario World for Nintendo's new game console, the SNES, suddenly the kind of sounds that Kondo was able to make increased dramatically. The NES had a very limited palette of simple waveforms, white noise, and limited audio samples. But with the Super Nintendo, each instrument was now based on a recorded audio clip, meaning that all kinds of real-world instruments could feature in Nintendo's soundtracks. Games like A Link to the Past feature brass, strings, cymbals, and drums. Right off the bat, Koji Kondo wanted to wow players with Super Mario World's increased audio capabilities. In order to convey to players just how great the Super Famicom was, I decided to use a bunch of instruments at once, using them one right after the other in the title song. But this technological leap came with a kind of philosophical challenge for Kondo. Previously, game soundtracks were easily identified by their 8-bit chiptune instruments. But if games could now use all kinds of instruments, then what was to differentiate game music from any other musical style? Kondo explained, "I started worrying about what exactly game music was." Eventually, Kondo decided that the answer wasn't the instruments he picked, but rather the combination of instruments. Game music should be music that uses an ensemble of instruments that you wouldn't usually hear anywhere else. There might be a bugle together with a banjo, for example. And that brings us to Mario's jump sound. Kondo considered using a similar chiptune sound for the jump. Mario's jump had become iconic after all. But eventually, he decided to upgrade the sound to a newfangled audio sample. Specifically, a pan flute. Admittedly, it doesn't sound much like a real pan flute, but you can really hear a change in the kind of tone, the timbre of the jump sound. It's softer, less harsh on the ears. Mario's jump had taken a jump forward, as it were. But it was only a few more years until the next Nintendo console, the N64, entered development, and with it, a brand new sound system. The N64 could play even more notes at the same time, and like the SNES, its instruments were sample-based. Unlike the SNES, however, these samples were really high quality. According to Kondo, I could create sound almost like you would hear on a regular music CD. Bass was bass and drums were drums, making the music was like actually playing real instruments. But when work began on Super Mario 64, the first 3D Mario platformer, Kondo ran up against a new problem. When he tried putting a classic Mario jump sound into the game, it just didn't feel right. It didn't fit the new 3D gameplay. I couldn't get the jump sound to match the action right, he said. The answer? The game's dev team decided that whenever Mario jumped into the air, he would speak out loud in English.
Yahoo! Waha! Yippee! Ha-ha! Whoa!
I've talked at length about how voice actor Charles Martinet got the gig as the voice of Mario in previous videos, but suffice it to say, the introduction of a voice for Mario in Super Mario 64 was a real evolution of Mario's sound. Having Mario shout each time the player jumped off a platform might feel natural now, but like the NES jump sound from Super Mario Bros., at the time, it felt novel. Even decades later, Mario's jump is still evolving. In 3D games like Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Odyssey, Mario received new libraries of voice clips to play when the character jumped. In 2D games, Nintendo mostly made use of retro-style jump sounds, similar to Super Mario World, with just the odd voice clip for emphasis when Mario wall jumps, for instance. That makes a lot of sense for the new Super Mario Bros. Games, which very much play to people's nostalgia for older Mario titles. But when Nintendo began work on Super Mario Bros. Wonder in the early 2020s, it was time for a change. Unlike the new Super games, which looked backwards, Wonder looked forwards. A new, fresh take on 2D Mario, and the sound effects too, received a fresh update. Koji Kondo explained, "We gave each character a distinctive jump sound and deliberately created sounds that would help convey the character's movements to players. Also, we wanted to give it a fresh feel by integrating the sounds of musical instruments into the sound effects. So, in this game, we used an electric ukulele made of Ezo spruce for Mario's jump sound." Wonder marked the biggest change in Mario's jump in decades. And this change to ukulele also came with gameplay improvements. Using strings has enabled us to add sounds of varying dynamics to better express the feeling of ascending. This is the first time the jump sound changes based on how the player jumps, just like how string instruments make different sounds depending on how strongly or softly a musician plucks the strings. It's really impressive that almost 40 years later, Nintendo's staff are still changing, refining, and updating such a fundamental sound effect as Mario's jump. The noise has been created using basic chiptune sound waves, then a pan flute, and now a ukulele string. Plus, of course, 2 human voice actors, Charles Martinet, and more recently, Kevin Afghani, who took over the role of Mario in 2023. I think it's pretty incredible that Koji Kondo has been there from the beginning, pushing for all of these changes and refinements. And in the year 2025, he's motivating a new generation of sound staff at the company to think big when it comes to game audio. After all, in real life, there's no sound at all when you jump into the air. But in the world of Mario, your imagination is the limit. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Videos like this one are made possible by my Patreon supporters, including Aaron and Catherine, Brett and Eric, Candy Crystal, Cyprian Eov, The Real Procyon, Daryl Gero, Ellie Birnbaum, Elise Rose Barsness, Eliza the Doe, Jim Gilsonan, Kieran Chan, Kelly Wright, Kickter Cosplay, Lucas Little, Michael Gunter, Preston Kurth, Robin Stick, Skater Pie, and Thomas Söderlund.